Hello, everyone. I'm Jason. I pastor a church in Walnut Creek, California, and this is Rethink Religion. Hear the words of Psalm 2. Why do the nations conspire and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth rise up and the rulers band together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, "Let us break their chains and throw off their shackles." The one enthroned in heaven laughs, and the Lord scoffs at them. He rebukes them in his anger and terrifies them in his wrath, saying, "I have installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. I will proclaim the Lord's decree. He said to me, 'You are my son. Today I have become your father. Ask me, and I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession. You will break them with a rod of iron, and you will dash them to pieces like pottery.' Therefore, you kings, be wise. Be warned, you rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and celebrate his rule with trembling. Kiss his son, or he will be angry, and your way will lead to your destruction. For his wrath can flare up in a moment. Blessed are all who take refuge in him." Psalm 2 is what we oftentimes call and refer to as a messianic psalm. That is, it's a psalm that was written well before Jesus came around, well before Jesus walked on the earth. And yet it was written in order to push us, intentionally push us to Jesus, to see Jesus, to hear Jesus and see Jesus in these words. Verse 1 of Psalm 2, which says, "Why do the nations conspire and the peoples plot in vain?" Verse 1 is quoted in Acts, in the New Testament book of Acts, as a means of explaining why it is that believers were persecuted and were being persecuted and still continue to be persecuted today. Verse 7 in Psalm 2, which says, "I will proclaim the Lord's decree. He said to me, 'You are my son. Today I have become your father.'" It's reminiscent. It reminds us, it pushes us to remember and to think about Jesus' own baptism as seen and as heard in the Gospels, when God the Father speaks out of heaven and says, "You are my son," to Jesus. "You are my son in whom I am well pleased." It is also a verse that is often quoted multiple times in the New Testament book of Hebrews as part of Hebrews, the book of Hebrews' defense for Jesus' divinity. Psalm 2, it begins by lamenting the experience of living in a world set against God's people. But before finally, again, as it progresses, it gives way to God's power as he sits on the throne and laughs at those who persecute, laughs at those who seek to take advantage of and to push down, to conspire against God's people. And finally, as you get to the end of Psalm 2, it ends with an invitation for us to serve, to fear, to worship, to kiss, and to take refuge in him, in the Son, as he's referred to here. As believers, we absolutely must accept the fact that we live in a world that is set against us, that is bent against us in every way, shape, and form. We are aliens and strangers, as we read and as it says in 1 Peter. We are just passing through. The world looks at us. They look at our God. They look at our worship. They look at what we believe and who we are and where our identity comes from. And they say, those are weird people who believe weird things and do weird things. But the Father, as we see here in this psalm, the Father has placed the Son, Jesus, on the throne as king, and the Father has given him all authority on heaven and earth. In Psalm 2 invites us invites you to accept his lordship, to accept the lordship of Jesus over every facet of life, over all of creation, to submit to him, to serve him, to embrace Jesus as Lord, and to take refuge in him. Hey everyone, were you encouraged by this episode of Rethink Religion? If so, make sure that you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on another episode. Thanks for watching.